My name's Holly Champion, and I'm the Senior Director of Communications and Programming for the Colorado PGA. Just a couple housekeeping items. Thank you, Ed, for hosting the Zoom link this morning. Please mute yourself if you're not speaking. If you have a question, feel free to use the raise hand button so Ed can know that you're interested in chatting with him. You can also drop questions in the chat, which I'll try to pay attention to for you, Ed. And this call, if you just heard that, is going to be recorded and available on the members only side of the Colorado PGA website. In case you'd like to reference it, if you want to share it with anyone who was not able to be on today, that's great. The recording is not available for PDRs, so you had to attend today's session to get the points. But it's my privilege to introduce, everybody knows Ed Oldham in our section. He's a very, very decorated instructor and a great mentor for anyone who's interested. So take it away, Ed.
Well, thank you, Holly. I'm going to share my screen here. All right. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
So ideas on becoming a better coach. So my goal anytime that I do a presentation to other PGA members is my goal is to make sure that everybody in the room walks away with at least one idea to help them become a better coach. So it's not about me. This is about you. Little background on me for those of you who don't know me. Grew up in North Platte, Nebraska, and there was my intention at the time was to go to the University of Nebraska and become an architect. And the summer before my senior year in high school, Rich Skinner called me, and Rich was the head pro at the club where I grew up, and Val Skinner's dad. And he asked me if I wanted to come to work for him. It was a small club, and I would open or he would close, and he would open or I would close. And I fell in love with the golf business, and I loved what he did. He was a good teacher. So that was really my inspiration for getting in the golf business. And fast forward to now, director of instruction at the Ranch Country Club. I've been here for a long time, a PGA master professional, and, some of that other stuff. So I am, let's move that window up. There we go. I'm very lucky to have coached this young lady since the 8th grade, and she's accomplished a lot of things, and hopefully a few more in her career. So on to what we're going to talk about today, things that I believe skill trumps technique. So I think if you take a look at that picture there, you see quite a wide variety of backswings. And if you think that there's only one way to do it, the Hall of Fame disagrees with you. I think you want to coach to the student goals. I think you want to coach the whole game. Long-term beats short-term. And this was actually a quote from one of my students, that you should stop focusing on what you're doing wrong and focus on what you're doing right. And I love that, so I wrote it down. So this is a video from the 2020 Tour Championship. These are the 30 guys that qualified for the Tour Championship. And what you're going to notice is that they're all different. And I think all of them have something quirky in their swing, or most of them anyway, something quirky in their swing that you certainly wouldn't coach into somebody. But they're all very skilled golfers. And so my number one goal with golfers is to, first of all, teach their goals, but try to make them a little bit more skilled. How about Scotty Scheffler's footwork? And they're all different. I think that video is pretty interesting. I have this on my phone, and I show it to students often on the practice tee. So that's enough. You get the idea. All right, people are a puzzle. You have to solve the puzzle in front of you. Try to solve their bad shots. Try to teach to their goals. Find out what their concepts are. Sometimes their concepts aren't very good. physical characteristics, physical limitations. I love this picture here. Their time commitment. Everyone is unique. So common problems, bad grips. Someone at one time, might have been Lee Trevino or Chichi Rodriguez, said that if a person held a fork like they held the golf club, they'd starve to death. See a lot of bad grips out there. Poor contact, face to path problems. Those are probably my two priorities with students, is trying to get their face to path relationship a little bit better and help their low point or their contact get better. Poor concepts. Get under the ball. Keep your left arm straight. The ball takes off on the path. Keep your head down. I hear fathers coaching kids a lot. I hear that. Keep your head down on the range a lot. Not paying attention to the right things. So I'll be coaching a player and practice swings look good, and then the swing with the ball doesn't look anywhere close to what we're trying to accomplish. And sometimes I'll say, what are you thinking about while you're swinging? And oftentimes they'll tell me, well, I'm not thinking about anything, because a lot of people think that they don't, or they shouldn't be thinking when they're swinging. And I will tell them that you need to be paying attention to your intention. Or they're thinking about the wrong things. I'm thinking about the target. I'm thinking about the golf ball. I'm thinking about making contact. Pay attention to your intention. Other common problems, physical limitations. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So lesson process. When you see a student on the tee, first lesson, make a connection, make them feel comfortable. Pay attention to their body language. I read this in a body language book, that if you walk up and shake their hand, hey, it's nice to meet you, and then they kind of step back a little bit, they are nervous, they are uncomfortable. And so if I observe something like that, I'm going to immediately start getting them to talk about themselves, and just, today's great, or just whatever, but get them talking to try to make them feel a little bit more comfortable. Another thing that I'll tell them early in the lesson, that if I think they're nervous, I'll tell them, hey, the pressure's on me. But observe their body language, get them talking about themselves. Questions. Tell me about your game. So that's the first question that I ask. And that's kind of an open-ended question. And I get all kinds of responses to that. Sometimes it's just a little bit, sometimes it's 5 minutes of responses, but you really hear a lot of different things. What's your handicap or average score? And what's your career lowest handicap? So I had a player once who was a 19 handicap, and I asked him what his career low handicap was. He said he was a 1. Played college golf, but then had taken like 12 years off after college and not played any golf at all. So the approach on that lesson is going to be certainly different from a person who was a 19 and that's their lowest handicap ever. How often do you play or practice? Oh, sorry. What is different? So that might be a good question for someone who's got a difference between what their current handicap and what their lowest handicap was. If somebody's a 10 and they said they were a 5 at one time, what's the difference? Why is it higher now than it was before? How often do you play? How often do you practice? I think these are key questions, because that's going to influence what you give them to do during the lesson. And is it going to be, more of a developmental lesson? Do they want to play golf in college? Or is it someone who's just shanking it and they want to get back to beating their buddies? So how often do you play or practice is an important question. What does a practice session look like? So I get all kinds of answers to that, but it really gives me an idea of maybe how efficient their practice sessions are. And that's one thing that I want to do during a lesson. So I want to make sure that they know how to practice. What are your bad shots? So that, I think that's an important question. So someone will say, well, I'm tend to hook the ball and tend to chunk it, or whatever it is. And so I'm going to keep that in mind during the lesson. And I'm also, when it comes to technique and skill practice, I'm going to be looking for things that would cause those bad shots. what's your jump off the bridge miss? Meaning, what miss just drives you crazy and you hate when that shows up? And if they have a question there or an answer there that goes along with their bad shots answers, then I'm definitely going to be paying attention to that. Any injuries, surgeries, or physical limitations? You wouldn't believe how many players say, no issues there. And they all have issues there. But you just have to kind of learn to be able to identify some of those physical limitations and being able to screen for them, which we're going to talk a little bit more about. What other sports have you played? Guy tells me he played tennis. He was a slicer. I said, I put the club in his right hand only. I said, show me your top spin forehand. He did. And I said, put both hands on and show me your top spin forehand. And we made it better. So sometimes you can relate what they've done in other sports. The other good thing to know there is if they played a lot of sports, they've been coached before. What would you like to accomplish today? What would you like to accomplish over the next few months? And what is your ultimate goal? I think all those are good things. You know, again, you're going to coach to the student goals. What's your lesson history? And what kinds of things did you do with that coach that were successful? I don't make it a habit to try to say bad things about other coaches. I think if the student wants to tell you bad things about other coaches, that's fine, but I'm not in the business of doing that. Is there anything that you are currently working on? You know, I want to know what's going on in their head. And, you know, that can relate back to the concepts comment that I made. What do you do for a living? I think that can be important in a couple of ways. Number one, are they an engineer? They're an analytical type person, but also do they sit at a desk all day where their hips might be tight and the thoracic might be tight? And then what shot do you want to hit? I reserve that one primarily for better players, because if I've got a higher handicap in front of me and they're slicing the ball, I'm just going to be moving them toward hitting draws anyway. So the assessment process, TrackMan tells me what the ball's doing, what the club's doing. I use K-Vest or K-Motion, tells me what the body's doing. That is 3D. TPI screens, what the student can and can't do. I use TPI screens a lot. For my serious players, I screen everybody. And for, you know, if it's the guy who's just shanking the ball and wants to get back to beating his buddies, if I see something in his swing, I'm probably still going to screen him right there on the tee. And it might be just a real quick screen. And I'll give you an example of that here in a little bit. Do I want to improve the skill of the ball striking or the face control? Or do I want to improve the movement? It kind of depends on their time commitment. It kind of depends on what their goals are. How much time does the student have to practice? What time of year is it? I think if the kid's got a tournament next week, then that lesson's going to look a lot different than if he or she comes to see me in November. Put together your plan with all that information. TPI screens. So for those of you who haven't done TPI, I would recommend it. I think TPI level 1, you can do online now. You used to have to travel for TPI, but really gives you an idea of what the body is doing and what the limitations are there. So test the movement. I think what's most common are hips and shoulders first, followed by thoracic. But that's good information to know. And in TPI Golf Level 2, you learn some of the workarounds for that. So this is me. Can anybody hear that audio? I was telling Holly I tried to download an extension and it told me I needed, and didn't know if I was successful. So here we're testing his hips, because during this lesson I thought that well, this guy's tight. So we tested his hips. Then I tested his thoracic.
Here, combine the shoulders.
And for those of you familiar with TPI, that's pretty tight right there. He's just locked in. And basically he wasn't turning in the backswing. And so it's good to know these things that, that if he can't turn, then we're going to figure out a way to work around that.
Here.
So this was a mistake that I made. So this girl came to me. She was from Broomfield High School. She was a lifetime gymnast, and she fell in love with golf. She was a great athlete and in good shape. And she came to me, and you can see that high right elbow. And so we worked on trying to get her elbows a little bit closer together. And, you know, I've worked with a smart ball. She even bought a smart ball, and she'd practice with it, and she'd come back and that elbow was still up. Well, finally, you know, here I was just assuming that she was in good shape. So I tested her in the shoulder mobility test, and she had no mobility in that right shoulder. And so she was just automatically going to go there. So that's just an example of, you know, you can't assume. And so nowadays, if I see that on the tee, I'm going to be checking the shoulder mobility. So K-Vest, K-Motion. If any of you are familiar with this, this is the evaluation report that you can do with them. You suit them up, calibrate, which only takes, I mean, you can have them suited up and calibrated in 2 minutes, have them hit 5 shots with a 6-iron, and this is what you get. So K-Vest measures bend, side bend, and rotation with the upper body and the pelvis. And you see position averages of at address, top, and impact. Anything in the green is good. Anything in the yellow is just outside the range. And anything in the red is something that you might want to look at. But it's just information, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that in a little while. Here's a kinematic sequence. Again, more information. I'll take a look at this, and you know, that kinematic sequence will show me how athletic and how efficient they are in the motion, how they are at transferring speed. See what's starting down first. You know, the pelvis bend graph, that one's pretty good. But again, all of this is just information for you.
Yes.
So this young man here, he's a D1 golfer. And kinematic sequence is good, as you see that often with D1 golfers. But if I look at that pelvis bend graph, we've got an issue there. He's basically going into S posture during the swing. At very little pelvic tilt. I put his TPI screen results up here, but or very little pelvic control, I should say. And so we've been working on that and making it better. A combination of me and a TPI fitness professional where he's going to school. But what you'll see here, this rear view, by the way, I think is really good for seeing what the body's doing, because it kind of takes away the distraction from the arms. But you see the bend right in the low back, the top, and then it kind of continues. And what happens when you get into S posture like that, the core muscles disengage and it sets them up for injury. So if there's a time that I'm not coaching to student goals, it's when I see something like this and they're going to injure themselves, especially someone who practices as hard as he does. We're gonna eliminate any possibility of injury. So analysis, ball flight, TrackMan, K-Vest, TPI screens, and then throw into that what their goals are, how much time they have to work on it, determine the course of action. Challenge point, couple of teaching and coaching summits ago, I had the opportunity to listen to a guy named Mark Wadanoli, and he talked about challenge point. And challenge point basically is, if you look at the bottom axis there, the task difficulty, and on the side, the performance. Basically, this is just a theory, but I think you want to try to find something that's just outside of their comfort zone, something that's going to make them a little bit better. Because if you make the task difficulty too hard for the student, they're not going to get any better. I think an easy way to think about this would be if sometimes I'll give students a putting task of 10 putts around the hole from 3 feet. And the goal is to make 7 out of 10 or better. And then if they do that, then they go out to 4 feet. And if they do 7 out of 10 or better from 4 feet, they go out to 5 feet and so on. So they're going to reach a point where it's a little bit of a challenge for them to get 7 out of 10 or better. And that's the challenge point. So then there's a learning opportunity for them there. If I had them do it from 20 feet, they're not going to make 7 out of 10. So that would be, that's a basic example of difficulty. Coaching process, technique, skills, compete. Big believer in that. Talk about feedback. I work on mental game a lot during lessons, and it might be just simple tasks, but I'll work on mental game quite a bit. Wrap up, homework, teach them how to practice. Technique, skills, games. So someone comes to me with, let's say, a slicing issue, and the path's to the left and the face is open. So we're gonna spend a little bit of time working on the technique. Obviously, it depends on their tournament schedule, depends on how often they practice. But then we're also going to do some skill drills. I'm going to give them some skill drills to try to make those things better. Variable club face practice, for example. If I want the club face better, then I'm going to have, I have almost everyone do this. Hit the ball a little bit left, hit the ball a little bit right, hit the ball a little bit more left, hit the ball a little more right, hit it down the middle. With the beginners, I'll just set up 3 balls and say, okay, the first one's going to the left, second one's going to the right, third one's down the middle. But that's an example of a skill drill. Skill drills might include hitting the ground in a certain place. You know, I mean, hit the ground too far back, hit the ground too far forward, now hit the ground just right. Or I'll show them the low point number on the TrackMan and say, okay, I just want to move the low point forward. That would be for better players. I have a lot of my kids do this, what I call a 7-shot skill drill: push, pull, draw, fade, straight, high, low. So they're learning to get the golf club to do what they want, to get the golf ball to do what they want. Teach them how to use the tool: face, path, low point, center contact. Those are all things that I really pay a lot of attention to. The critical skills: hit it solid, hit it far enough to score, and be able to predict the ball flight. Heck, I think if there's one secret to golf, that's being able to predict the ball flight. Don't assume. So where do you want the club to hit the ground? I ask that question every day to different students. Where do you want the club to hit the ground? And oftentimes they'll point at the spot behind the ball. And I'll say, well, if you hit it there, won't you hit it fat? Oh, yeah. And then they'll say, okay, right underneath the ball. So that's a good question to ask, is don't assume that they know that they want to hit the ball and then the ground. What makes the ball fly the way it does? So this picture is Leah Devine. She played in the Women's US Open at Olympic Club. I think it was 3 summers ago. And she and I had a lesson, it was probably 3 weeks before this. And I had asked her a question about ball flight. She didn't understand ball flight. And I just looked at her and I said, you should fire me as a coach. So don't assume. Some coaching tools: Goldilocks, reactive neuromuscular training, external focus of attention, exaggerate, rate the motion, KVS biofeedback. Pete Roach is on this call. Pete Roach participated in Skilled Coaching Alliance, so he's familiar with a lot of this. So Goldilocks, practice variability is what that is. So basically, the nervous system needs data points. I'm gonna grab a club. So let's say someone is open at the top. There's not enough room in the office to be able to do this, but I might have them take it back and say, all right, show me the air, show me too open. Now show me something that's way too closed, and then show me something in the middle of that. With better players, I'm probably going to do smaller variations. Like I'll tell them, give me 10% open, then 10% closed, and then just right. Dr. Will Wu, one of my mentors, talks about surrounding the ideal: too hot, too cold, just right. And Jack Nicklaus says he didn't become a great player until he could fix himself on the golf course during the round. So that's where that variable club face practice comes into play. because you give them a lot of experience at adapting or changing the club face on the tee. When they get out on the golf course and they're having one of those days where everything's going to the left, then they've got some experience at changing it the other way. So again, I don't think anybody can hear this audio, but this girl's tendency is for her path to be way too much to the right. And so I will start out by having her duplicate that error. And then this swing was too far to the right. And then I told her, give me something in the middle of that. And that's pretty much how we make her path better. And she is she's basically a year into competitive golf, and she's set 2 personal bests in the last 2 weeks. Shot a 79, and then she shot a 74, 76 in a high school tournament the other day. So and in this particular video, we're using KVS just for the biofeedback for her setup, because she tends to set up with her shoulders open. But the rest of that was just Goldilocks. This young man would come to me, see where his error is. The club face was too closed at the top. So now it's too open.
But show me 2 open. All right, good. Now show me something.
And then I told him, show me just right. And we did some smaller variations during that lesson, but by the time we were done, he was a lot better with that club face. This is one of our club members who was having a problem shanking the ball. And so I got this drill from Tyler Farrell at Bowling Alley. I just use some Dr. Scholl's and spray it on the ground. 2 lines. And so I'll start with the club in the middle. You swing down and hit the outside line first. So I always start with the air and then swing down, hit the inside line, then swing down and hit the middle. Some of that's calibration for the brain on where you want your club to come down in space. But now I'm telling him, all right, now I'm going to put a ball there and I want you to aim halfway in between the ball and the inside line. And we got the ball off the hustle. So that worked pretty well. Just another Goldilocks example. This young lady plays golf in college and was tending to get too narrow. So I told her to show me too narrow and then show me way too wide and then just right. So just, again, some examples of Goldilocks. Reactive neuromuscular training. Move them toward their air intentionally. So what happens when they do that? Their brain has to figure it out. Their brain has to solve the problem. They'll fire the muscles that's going to help them to create a better motion. So it can also help them to avoid cognitive overload. My friend John Dunnigan says, whoever does the work does the learning. And so in this case, they're doing the work. So this guy comes to me, this is a club member, our first lesson, and he makes that backswing. And I'm thinking, oh boy, what the heck am I going to do with that? So I have this thing, I just call my big yellow rubber band. And so what I tried to do, I decided to attack his pelvis movement first. And so I put him in posture, put the rubber band around him. And so I'm trying to pull him into that sway. And you can see how he starts fighting that sway. So he's figuring it out. He's figuring out how to move and not let me pull him back toward the sway.
Right.
And that was the difference. And this was the first swing after I pulled on him with the rubber band. And that's a in a matter of a couple of minutes, that's a pretty good improvement. So you can get again, they have to solve the problem in their brain. So that's a pretty good tool. So I'll use that big yellow rubber band for all kinds of things. This is a TPI video that is not wanting to play. But Greg and Dave are basically working with this tour player who gets into some reverse spine, and they're both working on him. And Dave is pushing on his chest this way, and Greg is pushing on his hips that way, trying to push him into that reverse spine angle, and they make him better. So I'm sure if you go to my TPI, or if you follow them on social media, I'm sure you can see that. Pete, you have a question?
Yeah, Ed, how you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
Great, thanks. Hey, so with the rubber band with that student, did you give him any cues?
No,
Or did you
I
just put it
didn't.
on there and just say, figure it out?
I showed him on video what I was trying to do, or what I was trying to cure, but I didn't give him any cues in that case. And you could kind of see in that video, his brain was kind of trying to figure out how he was going to move to not let me pull him back toward the sway. So this next one, this guy's a pretty good player, low single digit, but was tending to move quite a ways off the golf ball. We were having some low point issues. So I just went up and I held an alignment stick up next to his head, and I asked him to keep his hat against the alignment stick. And so that way, again, he's having to do the work. So that's less of an extreme example, but again, he's doing the work. So any questions on the reactive neuromuscular? I had a high school player last week. He was keeping his left knee way too flexed during the downswing, which kind of cuts off the rotation and hinders the release a little bit. And I got on the ground behind him, and I was pushing into his left knee and said, don't let me push you forward. You got to push back. And, that cleaned that up pretty quick too. Focus of attention. So for the purposes of this discussion, there are two types of attention: internal focus, external focus. So an internal focus of attention is when you're thinking about body parts. An external focus of attention would be thinking about something on the outside of your body or the effect of your body motion. So internal focus can be bad for a couple of reasons. But number one, it's going to create tension in the joints involved, and you'll lose degrees of freedom. Basically, creates a co-contraction. So if you can imagine flexing your bicep and your tricep at the same time, that creates a lot of tension in the shoulder and the elbow. Well, that's kind of what happens if you focus a little bit too much on body parts. And so, if I want somebody to make a shoulder turn, I might ask them to take the zipper on their sweater and turn it back. It's easier for the brain to handle. And sometimes you can get them to change very quickly. And then on the bottom of this page, I've got, when you pick the right clue, it's like you're talking to their muscles. So sometimes I'll give them a cue and it doesn't work, and then I'll pick another one. So if I want them to get a little bit more rotation at impact, I might say, let's get the zipper on your sweater and your belt buckle turned toward the target. And if that doesn't work, I might say, let's take the seam on this shoulder and get it behind your head at impact. So I'll keep throwing cues at them until I find one that works. So this guy here, I told him that the grip, in this case, they said this grip is a skinny water bottle, and I don't want you to spill any water at the top of your backswing. And that was one swing right there. So external cues can be very valuable. This young man, I just stuck a T in the end of his grip, and you can't see it, but on the video or on the picture on the right, there was an alignment stick on the ground a little bit further out away from the target line. And I just said, point the T at the stick. So simple cues. Here's the guy that I was testing for. I was testing for the hips and the thoracic. That was one cue. We made an adjustment in his setup, but I think I've got coming up the wrap up that I did with him. But this was basically one cue. Oh, here we go. All right, setup stuff. We did
You can see how your upper body's tilted this way a little bit now. I walked up and had you bump your hips forward a little bit toward the target and tilt your upper body back. It's not something that you need to overdo. Sometimes I'll tell people if you're wearing a necktie, that the necktie should hang behind your belt buckle, not in front of it. We did flare the right foot. We did a slightly narrower stance. Both of those are designed to help you pivot more with tight hips, right? So on this one, I think I cued you on belt buckle and shirt buttons. Turn back to the back window here. So that's a much better pivot. You can see how we can see the back of your shirt, whereas earlier, you could only see the front of your shirt. By making a bigger pivot, that opens the door to allow your club to come down more from the inside. And that was,
So that was, we changed the setup a little bit, narrowed the stance, flared the foot, got him to tilt back a little bit instead of tilting forward. And then, like I said, belt buckle and shirt buttons back, even though he wasn't wearing shirt buttons, he normally does. But that was a pretty easy one. But one of the workarounds, if you've got somebody with tight hips or tight thoracic, then you want to get them to make a bigger hip turn. So this guy's a +5 handicap, made it to the round of 32 at the National Mid-Am. We worked hard all winter long, eliminating a little bit of early extension, which you can see on the left. And you can see on the right, it was quite a bit better, and we've improved his contact. Looking forward to him having a good year this year. But the cue that we used, get his back pockets up in the air on the backswing, or excuse me, in the downswing. Feel like he's getting his back pockets higher. And again, we tried several other cues that didn't work, but that one did. Exaggerate. Some of you have probably, I've got a couple of screen recordings from that I got off of Instagram. Some of the best players in the world, we see some pretty good exaggeration. Alex Noren, I think everybody's probably seen that, but I love using exaggeration as a tool. So this was the young man that we were talking about club face earlier. Now we're dealing with path. So what you see here is with that video on the right. So what he was doing before, because the club face was so close, lots of in to out path, which you see there. And so I had him just exaggerating the opposite, just trying to feel like he was swinging too far to the left. You see the face got better at the top. Now we're swinging too far to the left. And then when he hits a golf ball, I think we saw Jordan Spieth doing that a couple of summers ago, quite a bit. So I encourage a lot of my players to exaggerate, go slower than normal, use video for feedback. And a lot of times I'll put it in numbers. So scale of 1 to 10, speed, 10 being fast. Scale of 1 to 10, exaggeration. How much exaggeration was that? Well, that was a 5. What was our speed? Our speed was an 8. Okay, we need to improve a little bit more. So let's drop the speed to 6, and let's increase the exaggeration to 7. Make another swing. Take a look at it on video, and we just keep adjusting until we find a place where we're getting what we want done. And then let's say we're good at a speed of 6 and an exaggeration of 7. Once we start to add the speed back in, if the speed goes up to 7 or 8, I'm going to want the exaggeration to go up to 8 or 9, and then be able to maintain the quality. if you get a student who is focusing a little bit too much on the outcome, this can be a tool that you can use called Rate the Motion. I always use video with this, and I'll say, all right, scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being best, or I might even give them some examples. This guy was had a little sway going with the hips, and so I said, okay, so the motion is, if you sway, that's a 1, and then if you go too much the other way, that's a 5. And so we'll do it, and then before I show him the video, I'll say, how do you think you did there? So you can see just a hint of sway there, but I would ask him to tell me, and then if we still had a little hint of sway there, and he was trying to do a 3, I might say, okay, let's do a 4. But rate the motion can get them out of paying a little bit too much attention to the outcome. KVS biofeedback can be handy. So this,
Say that again?
trying to get a little bit more upper body bend here, because he was having a tendency to get some backward bend at the top.
All right.
And
Now with the
and
ball,
hopefully everybody can hear that
I
audio,
want you to make a backswing and stop.
but
get the music to play and then go.
that can be handy. Feedback is critical. So feedback can come from a lot of different sources. It can come, augmented feedback is something external, like TrackMan or from me. Intrinsic feedback is something internal. What did it feel like to you? The reflection phase is important. So all of these are sources of feedback: video, TrackMan, KVAST, $3 TrackMan, which I'll show you that in a sec. Ball flight, divots, impact location with Dr. Scholes, or a dry erase marker, and of course the coach. Feedback mistakes. Giving feedback too frequently. I've actually observed other coaches doing this. Giving feedback on too many things. If you're working on low point, for example, and you're talking about the left arm at the top, or not enough shoulder turn, or whatever, maybe you're giving them feedback on too many things. I don't care for that. I think you try to identify 1 or 2 things, and that's it. Keep it to a minimum. And giving feedback too quickly. So I'm going to talk about that here in a moment. Feedback needs to be appropriate for the skill level. So I think the higher handicaps, the less skilled golfers need more feedback, because they don't have the database in their brain of what things feel like and what the ball flight looks like if they do something. Low handicappers need less feedback. Give them a chance to learn. So the student hits a shot, be quiet for a moment, because from hitting balls that when you hit a shot and you look up, immediately your brain's starting to calculate, well, how did I do there? Well, our students are doing the same thing. So be quiet for a moment, let them process that first. And then a question that I will ask, how'd you do? How do you think you did that time? How did that feel? And then we might use video for feedback, but I'm going to give them a chance to soak it in. When coaches provide feedback too frequently, athletes are less likely to retain what they learn and will often struggle to transfer that to the golf course. When the student is first working on a new skill or motion, give them more frequent feedback. But as they get better, start to reduce the amount of feedback. With that +5 handicap, I might go 5 or 6 or 7 swings without saying a word to him. I'll just let him hit a shot and let him feel something. Let that intrinsic feedback work. Don't just give feedback on errors. Tell them what they do well. Connect the ball flight and contact errors to tendencies. So that young man who had that trying to make the club face better, for example. So I might, if he hit one left, I might show him on video, say, here's where that club face was at that time. So that way he can start to connect what his tendencies are to the ball flight error. Help students to understand their best sources of feedback. So if we're working on improving center contact, it might be Dr. Scholes on the face. Oftentimes I'll tell them, go slow, exaggerate, use video for feedback. Providing them with feedback on how they perform the task versus the outcome is important. So getting a little low on time, but basically this is from a book called Coaching Every Season. It's kind of saying the same thing. Help them to understand ball flight. 3 key questions. Where did it start? How did the ball curve? How was the contact? And I'll use TrackMan to help show them the answers to some of those things. But I will also use something I call $3 TrackMan. So the alignment sticks that I give out to my students cost me $3 each. And with this girl here, you can see the alignment stick on the target line. And so that's just a visual to help them understand. And so you can start to, where did the ball start? Well, it started to the right of the stick. Okay, your club face is a little bit open in relation to the target. So that can be valuable. Gear effect. I happened to catch this one on video. This was pretty good. So you can see this girl's club face is closed at the top. The alignment stick is on the target line. And watch what happens to this. So I'll show this to students on the lesson tee to help them to understand gear effect. So she's coming into impact. That club face is just a little bit closed. And you see that face twist? And when that happens, she hit it on the toe, the face twists open, so the ball starts to the right of the target, but there's enough friction between the ball and the club face that'll actually reverse that. The face twists open, the ball is just the opposite, just like there's gear teeth on the face and the ball. And you can see their ball curves to the left. So that's what gear effect is. So this is Jennifer when she was a freshman at Wake Forest. She sends me a text and she says, I'm hitting cuts. Now she likes to hit cuts now, but back then she liked to hit draws. And she sends me this swing. And I said, there's no cut in that swing. I said, do you have access to a TrackMan? And she said, yeah. Okay, go hit 6 shots and send me the numbers. So she hit 5. There's the numbers. You look at the path, 1.6 degrees to the right, faced a path that was minus 2.8. So it was a closed face at impact. And I just told her you're hitting on the heel. She said, you're kidding me. I said, no, you're hitting on the heel. Go get a dry erase marker, some Dr. Scholl's, and sure enough, she was hitting on the heel. And so it was the gear effect that was causing her to hit the cuts. So gear effect can override some of these other things. Gear effect is important. Teach them how to practice. Technique first, work on skill, and then compete every day. And compete every day could be simple games that they can create on the range or the practice tee. Helps them to become better students, but they have to know what to do. So many of our students will go to the range and work on technique only. So this young man, he's holding up 2 fingers, closing one eye, and he's putting those 2 fingers on either side of one of the poles on our range. And so that creates a target area for him. And the game we were playing was we're going to hit 5 balls to that target area and see how many you can get within the target.
Okay, so now full process.
Other things you can do on the golf course, you can pick a couple of poles or a couple of flags and see how many you can do. One of my favorite games is 3 in a row. So let's say you're hitting a driver, or it could work for a 4-foot or a 5-foot putt. We'll use the driver example between say the black pole and the yellow pole. That's your fairway, and how many out of 5 can we get within your target area? And what that will do, especially when they get to the 3rd one in a row, it'll put a little bit more pressure on them. So I like practicing with a little bit of pressure. Mental coaching, just a couple of things real quick to help teach students how to deal with stress, nerves, and anxiety. Being present and accepting. I like a routine where it's see it, feel it, walk in, align the face first, hit the shot, paying attention to your intention, and then afterwards imprint or reflect and replace. And what I mean by that is if it's a good shot, you imprint it. And I'll tell the kids, never pass up an opportunity to build your self-image as a golfer. Because golfers tend to do the other thing. If they hit a good shot, it's like, oh, well, that should have happened. And if they hit a bad shot, that's where they had the emotion. Well, if they had a bad shot, I don't want any emotion. I want them to reflect on it and say, okay, what happened there? Oh, my club face is probably a little closed. So you make a practice swing and fix it. So that's the process of imprint or reflect and replace. I value growth, not perfection. I'll show people a stock chart and say, this is your game now. This is your game a year from now. We just want to try to make it better. I would encourage everybody to teach with 3D if possible. I know there are some like Sportsbox AI. I'm not sure that you can be that accurate with one camera, but Sportsbox AI does have some good education. It'll help you to understand how the body works. And I think that that's good. Technology notes, the analysis is not the instruction, it's just information. But you can use that towards helping the student accomplish their goals. Sometimes with TrackMan, I'll put up one number. I'll take off all the other numbers and just put one number on them. That's good feedback. So again, just an example of this is just information. The guy on the left was a collegiate All-American, is playing golf professionally. And the guy on the right was the guy that had that, I used the big rubber band on. Yet, if we look at the kinematic sequence, you might guess that the guy on the right is better. And here's Jennifer Cupshow's K-Vest evaluation, and the guy on the right, I mentioned green is good, yellow is just outside the range, and red is bad. Well, the guy on the right couldn't break 90 at the time. So that's just an example. This is information, and if I take a look and there's a certain ball flight error, and I remembered that we had an error or we had something in the red, maybe that's something that we work on. Teach them how to play, smart targets, respect the out of bounds of water, wedges and chipping, get the ball on in one, bunkers out in one, putting, distance control. Be really good at inside of 5 feet and be really good at hitting the ball the right distance. Eliminate 3 putts. Be good at a few things. Run your process. That means a routine. And avoid doubles and bogeys. I encourage people to scrimmage. Go out on the golf course when they're not keeping score. Tyler Farrell told me one time, he said, what if you had a room at school where all you did was take tests? Every time you walk by that room, your heart rate would go up. Your anxiety level would go up a little bit. It's kind of the same thing if you go out on the golf course and you're only keeping score. What if you're able to go out and do a number of different activities or just go around and hit some shots and work on what you're working on? There is no learning in the lesson. Learning takes place between the lessons during the practice. I like to see motion changes with the practice swing, then going slower, then at regular speed, and then while changing clubs and targets. Anytime you add a change, it adds challenge to the brain. Then on the course when scrimmaging, then keeping score, maybe keeping score with your buddies, and then playing in a competition. And the students also need to be able to perform when faced with variable conditions on the golf course, such as, you've got a right to left wind with the ball above your feet and you're between clubs. What are you going to do? Nick Saban quote, the standard of excellence is always under construction. It's never complete. And what he's talking about is continue as a coach to evolve and learn, always get better. Coach Wooden would pick one part of basketball every offseason, and he would write to other coaches and he'd want to talk to them about defense or rebounding or something. But one of the greatest coaches of our lifetimes did stuff like that. Self-reflection. How did I do? Did I accomplish the objectives? Did I help accomplish student goals? What could I have done better? I think that that's an important process to go through as a coach on a daily basis. Ways to improve your teaching. If you're interested in this, I can email this to you. But just a bunch of, I list 41 things that you can do, from reading books to taking lessons and other activities. But things you can do to improve. This is a suggested book list. I've read every single one of these. I can email this to you as well. Education certifications, the ones that have had a lot of influence on me. Skilled Coaching Alliance, which is Dr. Will Wu and John Dunnigan. Excellent coaching certification. TPI, I've gone through several levels of that. K-Motion, Forces in Motion, which is a good one, and Biomechanics of Golf, which is Penn State. But I've got some other ones on there. I haven't done all of these, but there are a couple on this list that I'll be doing here next. So any questions, let me know. There's my email address. There's my cell number. I'd be happy to email those lists to you. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I have I use Coach Now for my coaching, and I have a group in there that is pretty much just for mentoring. I started it for a person who works there, and now I have 4 professionals in there. But anytime that I think that there's something that can be learned, I'll do a quick video and dump it in there. If you're interested in doing that, just send me an email and I'd be happy to put you in there. So anybody have any questions?
Ed, do you have any more types of games that puts pressure on students, maybe short game, and sort of the same as 3 in a row?
So with, you could do 3 chips in a row if you want. If they have the opportunity to chip and go put it in, I'll say play 9 holes around the putting green. I want you to pick 3 holes that are pretty easy. 3 holes where you might think about, maybe you think about chipping it in. I mean, it's that easy to chip. Then I want you to play 3 holes. It would be more of a kind of a standard chip. And then I want you to play 3 hard holes. Go get on a downslope out of the rough or whatever. But you're going to chip it and go put it in and keep score. And then based on the skill ability of the person in front of me, I'll sometimes give them a goal. If it's a good player, I might say, all right, your goal is to get 21 or better. If it's a higher handicap, I might say, 25 or 27 or better. But that gives them a lot of experience at having to adapt to all the different lies, and it gives them the real experience. Oftentimes we'll stand there and we'll toss balls back and forth, and I'll stand in different places and say the reason why you are good at distance control on tossing a ball is because you have a lot of experience at doing that. And by going around the green, you're not just going to stay in the same place hitting ball after ball after ball. It's a waste of time. Maybe do that for 5 minutes and work on your fundamentals, your foundational elements, and then work your way around the green, hitting a variety of shots and fill that database in your brain full of experience, because that's a skill to be able to hit, get it up over a bunker into a tight pin, and, hitting a long chip shot where you want to hit a little bit lower and stuff like that. But play a game.
Cool. Thanks.
You bet. Well, Holly, it appears as if we don't have any other questions.
Yep, seems like it. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining. Again, there's Ed's contact information. I'll also send you all a follow-up email with his information, plus a link to the Colorado PGA website where you can view and share the recording if you'd like. Takes a little bit of uploading on our part, but rest assured you'll get that hopefully by the end of the week. And if anybody has any questions or feedback, feel free to shoot them to me, shoot them to Ed. And thank you guys for hopping on today.
All right.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Holly. Thanks, everybody.
Ed, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Ed.